down the basement, lock the cellar door, and baby, talk bloody to me.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Talk Bloody to Me. I'm Matt,
And I'm Brizzy.
and this week we're a couple weeks late, but we're going to talk about a Friday the 13th movie. I have my Jason shirt on for those of you watching the video.
I got my mask, but I'm not gonna wear it today.
Right, you wore it 2 weeks ago. Go back and watch our Phantasm, I think it was Phantasm 2 and 3.
Yep, because
And
it was Friday the 13th
because it was Friday
that
the
weekend.
13th. Yep. But this week we're talking about Friday the 13th Part 6 because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but some cast members are going to be at Crypticon, Minnesota this year, correct?
Correct. Three of them.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Do you know which ones?
We got Darcy DeMoss, which she played Nikki, and then CJ Graham, which played Jason, and then you got Tom Frilly, he played Court.
Oh, nice. So you get to meet Jason himself,
Yeah, I'm gonna plan on meeting him for sure.
right? Definitely. And then speaking of Crypticon, what else is going on this weekend?
So, Kansas City Crypticon is happening this weekend. Actually, it's happening now because they're getting all set up. So, if
Oh,
you
nice.
guys are traveling, stay safe and have fun. I want to see photos.
Definitely. I've heard that Kansas City Crypticon is a good time, so one of these days I'll have to make the trip and go down there, see what it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
see how it compares to Minnesota. But anyway, back to our main story is Friday the 13th, part six. And this is, I was telling Breezy earlier, this is like, I think the second Friday the 13th movie I saw. And actually, I think maybe one of like the first five horror movies of all time I've seen. It was a very early on what our horror movie I saw. So this one has kind of a special place in my memory. How about you, Breezy? When did you first see this?
I seen this one when I was a kid,
Right.
but I didn't like be like you, like, oh, watch part, what is it, two or three, and then watch four or whatever,
Yeah.
and then you kind of
I
backtracked. At
think
least I did one, two, three, four, five.
yeah, I think I saw part seven was the first Friday the 13th I ever saw, and I think that was the newest one. Like it was new when I saw that. And then shortly after I saw that, I saw this one, part six. And then I think after that I saw part four. And then after that I think I saw part five. And then I think I saw part eight. And then at some point I saw part three. And then way later I saw one and two. And then I saw Jason Goes Down.
Well,
So
you're just all over the board.
just all over the map, exactly. But this is the beginning of so Friday the 13th part 6 starts off, and it's Tommy Jarvis and his buddy, and they're going to, spoiler alert if you haven't ever seen part 5. Okay, so spoiler alert, in the end of part 4, a young Tommy Jarvis played by a young Corey Feldman kills Jason, chops the shit out of his head with the machete and goes die, 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 die. And that's how part 4 ends, and that was Friday the 13th part 4, the final chapter, which at one point was intended to be the final chapter, hence the name. But they said, screw that, there's money to be made with Jason. We're going to crank out a bunch more. And so they made part 5, A New Beginning, is what it's called. And spoiler alert, Jason's not in that movie. It's a fake Jason, it's a
Yeah,
copycat Jason. And
that
so
just pissed me off, actually.
yeah, I think it pissed a lot of people off. And I remember at the time, like, thinking like, okay, well, Halloween 3 is the one without Michael Myers, and Friday the 13th 5 is the one without Jason, but it's different because Halloween 3 is a completely different story that has absolutely nothing to do with any of the Halloweens, but still a cool movie. But
Yeah.
Friday the 13th Part 5 is still connected to them all, just that there's no Jason. It's a fake wannabe copycat Jason. And so Tommy Jarvis in part 5 goes through this whole ordeal of the fake Jason. Um, and so part 6 starts, and him and his buddy, they're gonna go to the grave. They're gonna dig it up. They're gonna prove that Jason's in his grave once and for all. And then they're gonna pour gas on him and burn him, cremate the body. No way Jason's coming back from that. So they get there. They
Yeah,
dig.
did you like the maggots on that?
I did actually.
Maggots and all that stuff on his face.
I do. I have vivid memories of seeing that as a kid and being like, "Whoa!" Like that was just
I'm
crazy.
surprised you didn't throw up.
I am too, actually. I don't remember, but I wouldn't be surprised if at the time I got a little nauseous.
Yeah, especially when if you're a kid, probably.
Yeah, because they show a close up of his face, and you can see it, maggots squirming and wriggling and moving around. So Tommy goes Wolvie Berserker and grabs like a fence post, and he's having like a nom flashback of all the trauma of Jason, and so he's like stabbing him with the post, going ah, and then he's like, okay, I got that out of my system, and then all of a sudden, wha-bam! Lightning bolt hits the fence post in Jason's body, and you see his eyes open, and Jason comes out of the grave. Well, they've tried to pull the pole out, but then Jason comes out of the grave, kills Tommy's friend, and you see all the maggots fall out of his face and onto the ground, and they're like plop, 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 plop. That's kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah.
And Jason lives. It's Friday the 13th, part six. Jason lives, hence the name. And Tommy runs to get help. Um, and I saw a meme on Instagram that was like, all the people that Jason killed from part six forward are indirectly Tommy's Jarvis's fault because he's the one that brought Jason back to life.
I think I've seen that around,
Yeah. Yeah.
not like on Instagram. I think I've seen it on Facebook.
Oh, maybe. I'm sure it's all over
Oh
everywhere.
yeah.
But it's kind of they kind of got a point actually. If he would have just
Yeah.
left him in the freaking ground, but no, he had to go berserker with the fence post.
Yep.
Now we're gonna pause right here because I have a question for you. There's a lot of debate about this on the internet, and I'm curious what you think. So, was Jason always an undead person back from the dead, or was he a human up until this point, and this is the point where he turns into an undead monster?
And my option is probably the second one what you just said.
Yep.
Because,
That's
he was a kid and then he drowned
yep.
and then he grew up and then you got this scene.
Yep.
So I think the second option will be my pick.
Yep, that's what a lot of people think. And then the people on the other, there's some people that say that, well, if you look at part one, he drowned and he supposedly died, but then he came out of the lake, so he came back from the dead. And then other people are like, well, no, he didn't actually drown. He just was living in the woods or whatever. And then some people say he was a ghost in part one because his mom sees like visions of him, but then they're like, no, he wasn't a ghost. She was just tripping or hallucinating because she's psycho. And so there's a whole bunch of debate about that. And then in part three, he's like in the hospital or the morgue and he like they think he's dead and then he comes back to life. And people are like, see, he was dead and he came back to life. And other people are like, no, he wasn't dead. They just thought he was dead, but he didn't actually
Well, yeah,
wasn't
you could.
dead.
Yeah, yeah. That's a good debate too.
Right? So there's so people going back and then some people are like, well, in part nine, he's a worm thing that comes out and goes into people's bodies and possesses them and then turns them into Jason and everyone's like, shut the fuck up. No one cares about part nine. Get the hell out of here. But
Yeah.
so it's kind of open to interpretation, which I kind of like. But at this point in part six, there's really no question. He's definitely undead because he was
Oh,
in a grave rotting with maggots in his face, and he got brought back to life with a lightning bolt um, to the fence post, so on. So anyway, moving on. Tommy Jarvis, who kind of looks like a bad clone of Emilio Estevez, the actor Tom
yeah.
Matthews.
That's what I. Oh my God. Am I chameleon SMSs in here? So I had to like
Yeah.
actually look at the cast. I'm like, no, he just looks just like him.
Right, exactly. I'm glad I'm not the only one that was thinking that.
Yep.
And then they get to the he goes to the sheriff, who reminds me a little bit of kind of like a Tim Curry, but not quite. But he or like a 70s porn star too, also. But that's what the sheriff looks like.
Oh my gosh, Matt. The 70s porn star.
Right.
Wow.
I'm sure he's a wonderful, wonderful actor, wonderful gentleman in real life.
Right.
Um, but they so they he goes to them for help, and of course in true movie fashion he's like, you're crazy, there's no such thing as undead Jason, you pranksters and youth with your you're crazy. You're gonna go out and kill people. And then he like is gonna lock Tommy up. And then meanwhile, Jason's out and about killing people. The first victims, I believe, are it's a car with two counselors that were on their way to Crystal Lake, right?
Yep.
Jason standing in the middle of the road, and she's like, "Turn around! If there's one thing I've seen, it's that people in a mask are bad news." And he's like,
Yep.
"I'm gonna scare them." So he steps on the gas.
With that old style, like I want to say Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
even I wasn't that scared of it. I was like, "Come on, man, really? I could just roll over
Yeah.
the top of this thing."
And they were almost got stuck in the mud too.
Oh yeah, because they were good. He started off backing up, but then he almost got stuck in the mud. So then he's like, "I'm gonna scare him." So he pulls right up to an inch away from Jason. Jason doesn't flinch, and then Jason proceeds to murder them all. She tries to offer. He kills the guy first, and then she's laying in the mud, and she pulls out her wallet. She's got money and cash, and she's like, "You can take it. You can take it." And then it's like, "Oh, he's gone." All of a sudden, pull.
Right in the
Yeah,
mud. Right
yeah,
in the mud.
yeah.
It's pretty much face plant in the mud.
Exactly. I remember that being kind of hardcore when I first saw this as a kid. I was like,
Oh,
whoa.
I bet.
Yeah. And then there's a really long, lingering shot of her American Express cart floating on the top of the mud puddle. And I thought, gee, I wonder if American Express paid and how much they paid to have that 10-second shot of the American Express card just floating there in the center of the frame.
Right.
But um, because Jason didn't take American Express, should have brought Visa.
Yep. Yeah. I don't think he would take Annie. He just wants to kill you.
Right, exactly. And then, so like, oh no, I'm losing track of everything. Tommy gets out of jail eventually. Do they release him or does he escape? They must have let him out, right? I'm
Yep.
drawing a blank. Okay, so
I
then
think they let him out.
he's like, oh, the grave digger saw that the Jason's grave was dug up, and he's like, well, we can't have that. People are going to blame me. So then he filled it all in, and then he looks right in the camera, and he's like, some people have a sick idea of entertainment. And that's like a joke on the audience because it's like, hey, you fuckers are sickos watching this shit, and you got a sick idea of entertainment. There's a
Hey,
few
us horror fans, we are sick and twisted in the mind. I mean, hey,
exactly
sorry,
and
not
proud
sorry.
of it. But I like that there's a few kind of humor moments like that where they tried to add a little comedy in there, make it a little dark comedy. But so at some point they go to check the grave and the grave's filled in, and he's like, "See, I told you, Jason's not dug up." And he's like, "No, someone filled it in. They must have. I swear." And then there's like some paintball people like out in the woods playing
Yeah, like
paintball.
the army.
Yeah. What the
That
hell is
was so
that?
cheesy.
It's like so they're like some and they're just all dweeby too. They're just all like
Yeah.
nerds. And I remember when I saw this, paintball was like a new thing, kind of hard to believe, but it was like still fairly new. And it was like, oh wow, paintball, that's so cool. I want to play paintball. Now it's like you can go like half a dozen different places and play paintball. But at the time, it was like, oh shit, look at that, that looks so fun. But the one guy shoots, he kills a couple of them, and then the one guy shoots Jason with the paintball gun. And it goes like splats on his chest, like a
Yeah.
little, and then Jason's like, "The hell was that?" Like he doesn't say
Yeah.
that obviously, but that's like his reaction.
I don't know. This that whole scene was just cheesy. Even though it is cheesy, but I did like that paintball. Like,
Yeah,
what's that about?
yup, exactly. I agree. That part was cheesy. It felt really kind of random, but I think they just needed more people for Jason to kill. And they're like, who the hell else would be out in the woods? I guess some paintball people. Why not?
Yeah. Why
Um,
not?
So then the camp counselors come to Crystal Lake and they're getting set up and they're like, "Oh God, the kids are going to be here." And then the one counselor's telling the whole legend of Jason and the backstory of how the kid drowned and the counselors weren't watching. He comes back from the dead, and today is even Friday the 13th, and there's only one thing more scary than that. And they're like, "What's that?" And then school bus full of kids pulls up, and she's like, "That." I was like, "Oh shit, you got me." But then there's kind of this runner where they're the counselor Jason's basically picking off the counselors one by one, and the counselors are convinced that the other counselors are playing pranks on them, and there's but meanwhile it's Jason and they're getting killed, and then Tommy's running around trying to get help. He meets the sheriff's daughter Megan and kind of convinces her to help him out, and they're kind of on their little mission. And but this is where most of the killing, your typical Friday the 13th type
Hmm.
stuff happens. Um, what is there any particular killing scenes that stand out in your mind?
Yeah, the funniest one was the whole camper, the RV.
You,
I don't know. I like that. I don't know. It's not the sex scene. It's just like what's actually going on because Jason got in there and
yeah,
there he was driving very like well, I want to say very fast, but reckless
yep,
and just grabs her in the bathroom and just like I
yeah,
just it's funny. I
exactly.
love that scene.
Yeah. You were you were like wait until the camper scene, and as soon as you said that, I like it popped into my memory, like it unlocked the memory of the past. I was like, oh yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I really liked that camper scene. But yeah,
Yeah, I like that one.
it's the couple and they're going at it in the camper, and she's like, you can't finish until the song's over, and he's like, well, how long is left? And she's like 10 minutes, and it's like 10 minutes, what the fuck song are they listening to? What,
Yeah,
10
but
minutes?
would you complain if you if a girl says no, don't do that until the song is done?
No, I
Well,
wouldn't
how
complain.
long? 10 minutes. If I was a guy, I wouldn't complain.
Right. I just was like, how many 10-minute songs do you know?
Yeah, well, yeah.
Right. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Um, the power goes, Jason kills the power to the camper, so the song ends, and the guy's like, oh, thank God, finally. And she's like, what, already? And he's like, what? I thought the song was over. And then they figure out, well, Jason, holy shit, we better get out of here. So, like you said, he starts driving kind of like an asshole, and she's flying all over, and he stomps on the gas, and she flies backwards, and he stomps on the brake, and she flies forward. He stomps on the gas again, she flies backward. Then Jason pops out of the bathroom and yoink,
Yeah.
and then he finishes them both off.
Well, yeah, he killed her in the bathroom and then he walks up and then you see him like in the rearview mirror. Whoop,
Oh
and
yeah,
then he like slits his throat and then Jason was still in the vehicle and then he that RV got flipped.
oh yeah, yeah, yep, yep.
I'm
Who's
like,
the?
that's a badass.
Yeah, that is badass. Who's the one who he ripped the arm off?
Oh, I don't remember.
But there's one. Is that where he gets the machete? Someone's like someone's gonna attack him, and he grabs their arm and like rips their whole arm right off, and then they show him holding the arm. Like,
Yeah, that was in this movie, but
yeah,
I that's a good
someone,
scene too.
one
But
of the counselors.
yeah, that's a good scene too.
Hmm.
Because then that tells you don't F with Jason because he will rip your head off, your body parts.
Yes,
I
exactly.
just love it.
He's superhumanly strong. Um, and then there's one part where he's outside the window, or the counselor's in the cabin, and she thinks it's one of the people playing a prank outside the window, so she like pours something out the window on him, and it's actually Jason, and then he comes in and slashes her throat. I think drawing a blank, but there's lots of killing. Eventually, they get a plan that he's got a big chain baby, and he's got a rowboat, and he's gonna go out into the lake, and he's gonna lure Jason out there. Um, all the kids in the camp are in one cabin. Megan's in
And this
there.
ain't no teen kids. This is like children,
Yeah, like little
which
little
I
kids.
yeah, which I do really like that. It's like a different vibe.
Exactly. Yeah, and it's like, oh, these kids are in danger. Are they actually going to go murder the kids? That's going to be crazy. But he's kind of going after Megan, and then Tommy's out in his boat, and he's like, Jason, I'm the one you want. Hey, maggot head. Hey, maggot head. He says it twice in a row. I thought that was
Yep.
funny. And so then Jason comes out, starts going into the water to attack Tommy, and he turns back at one point. He's going to go back to the cabin, and Tommy's like, no, you pussy, come get me. I'm the one you want. So he goes after him, and he wraps the chain around his neck. And oh, he poured a bunch of gas in the lake because you can't just drown. You got to have fire too, because make it exciting. So he pours
Yep.
fire all over the lake, lights it on fire so that the rowboat's in a burning ring of fire. And then Jason comes, he puts the chain around, and they go down, down, down in the burning ring of fire. And Jason's drowning. He's holding on to Tommy. Tommy's drowning. Megan jumps in, swims to get Tommy. Jason grabs onto her leg, and she takes the machete and no, it's the boat.
Mhm.
It's she turns the boat on, and the
Yep.
propeller moves the propeller blade over right into
On it,
Jason's
like on
neck.
his, yeah, on his neck and face. It looks
Yeah,
like,
and it's like, and then you see all these chunks start coming up from under the water. And then there's like this one big beef jerky looking chunk that comes up right at the end. It's all square and flat. And then it's like, okay, they get away. And then she does CPR and revives Tommy. And then it's like, yay, happy ending. Everyone's happy except for all the countless people that were killed. But
yeah,
the kids survived. That's the main thing. And then it's like, oh, but they show Jason underwater, chained up, and he's floating there kind of at the bottom of the lake, and all of a sudden they show his eyeball and his eye opens and he's looking around. He's still alive.
you
And
know,
then
that
that,
seems very popular.
yeah. Did you know that there's a lake? I think it's somewhere in Minnesota where someone actually chained up a Jason statue and put it at the bottom of the
Yep.
lake. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's awesome.
I really want to go see that.
Yeah, so like you can go scuba diving in the lake and see the Jason statue chained up at the bottom. That'd be so
Yeah,
cool.
people are like afraid. I'm like, it's fake.
Yeah, exactly.
That'll be the dude. That would be so cool if you scuba dive down there and all of a sudden you see like bubbles and eye movement. Would that scare
Yeah.
the shit out of you? Or
That would scare, like, if I went down there and I was like, wow, this is a cool statue, and then all of a sudden the eyeball started moving, I'd be like, bubbles would come flying up to the surface, and I'd be like,
I can. Oh my God! If we do that, I'm gonna so video record you and see what you do.
yeah,
I will give Jason a little kiss
yeah, you
right
probably
on the
would.
mask.
Yeah. There's like, watch, there's like some big carp or like a walleye or something got swam in there, and so there's like a fish moving around, and it's like, oh my God.
Yeah, but that will make it even more exciting.
Exactly. Oh, but hey, what? And so that's pretty much Friday the 13th, part six. But one thing we should mention, what do you think of the soundtrack of this movie?
I like it. It was okay for me.
Yeah, this is I think Alice Cooper did a lot of the
Yep.
music for this song, and there's the one song in particular, He's Back, the man behind the mask. Oh, and he's back. He's the man behind the mask. All right,
Hmm.
you're welcome, everyone. Thank you. And, they play that song like three different times that I noticed in the movie.
Yes, they did.
It's like, hey, we paid Alice Cooper for the song. We're gonna effing play it, people. Just put
Right.
it in the movie. So, and
Well,
then there's
Alice
a
Cooper's a good song or a good artist too. So,
oh, definitely. And then there's a different Alice, like a totally different Alice Cooper song at a different point in the movie, where I was like, oh, hey, that's also Alice Cooper, but it's not Man Behind the Mask. And then there's other Alice Cooper sounding rock and roll songs that I
yep.
don't think are actually Alice Cooper, but they're in the same sort of genre. So
Or
yeah,
it's just like the band itself.
right. So pretty good soundtrack overall. I do love that song, Man Behind the Mask. I can remember I had that on like cassette tape and I would jam out to that as a
It's a
kid.
good song.
It is. So, what would you rate Friday the 13th Part 6 Jason Lives?
This one, I'm not really particular of this one. I like all Friday the 13th, but this one is just not my favorite. Yes, I'll watch it.
Mm-hmm.
I will still probably rate this higher, so like 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me too. It's funny because before I rewatched it, I was saying like, oh, like I would tell anyone that listened, and I'd be like, oh, Part 6 is one of my favorite Friday the 13th. So I was like, oh, I love Part 6. Part 6 is awesome. And then I was watching it this time, and I was kind of like, this isn't as good as I remember. It's like I think a lot of that was because I was a kid. It was all so new and so shocking, and so I had all these vivid memories. And now that I'm an adult and I've seen so much more horror,
Hmm.
that it's just sort of like, oh yeah, this isn't nearly as cool as I remember it being, but it's still dang good. So I say yeah, about an eight sounds good.
I
So
think my favorite Friday the 13th movies is probably, I think, number four. Four or
yeah.
five. I couldn't remember. I gotta watch it again.
I agree. Four is the final chapter with young Corey Feldman killing Jason. Um, is that the one? That's the one with Crispin Glover, right? where he's
I
dancing all crazy, where he does this
I think
crazy herky jerky dance.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's also one of
I think so.
that's probably my favorite moment in Friday the 13th. Is Crispin Glover's herky jerky weirdo dance.
Well, at least we don't have to review the Manhattan one because we already did that one.
Yep, we do. We did already discuss Friday the 13th Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan. So you can look for that in our archives. We also talked about Friday the 13th, the remake, and
The
we've
'09
talked,
version.
yep, and we've talked about Freddy versus Jason. So kind of like how I watched him, we've been going all out of order, all randomly.
Well,
So,
they're from Crypticon. They're coming from Crypticon. Like the one from the Manhattan, like last year, that was from Manhattan.
yep, exactly. So there's a method to our madness.
Yep.
I really like part four is one of my favorites, and I think part seven is one of my favorites. But I think maybe just because that's the first one I saw, and I really like the telekinetic part of it too. But again, probably like this one. If I watch it again nowadays, I'll probably be like, oh, that's not that great. But part seven has the sleeping bag kill, doesn't it?
I believe so too.
That's awesome. You gotta love the
Have you
sleeping bag.
seen Jason X?
You know what? I don't think I ever have. When it first came out, I was like, nope, I'm not seeing that. And then I saw clips and pieces of it, like I saw him getting his cyber upgrade, and I was like, nope, that's fucking stupid. And it's no funny because I usually like sci-fi and robots, but I was like, oh hell no, not Jason. But
It's a little bit different.
yeah, I haven't heard good things. I've yet to hear a person be like, "Oh my God, I effing love Jason X. It's the best." Everyone's always it basically seems like you either hate it or you're like, "Meh, it was okay." It's
Yep.
kind of it's
Yep.
kind of the range of it.
Well,
But,
eventually we're going to have to rebuild that someday.
yep,
What
exactly.
about Jason Goes to Hell?
Jason Goes to Hell is really weird and it's off and different from all the other Friday the 13th movies, but there's a weird part of me that does kind of like it. I don't know why. I like Duke, the guy that's like the Jason killer guy that's hunting him or whatever. He talks about the pineapple ring on the
I've
hot dog.
So my very first Crypticon that I went, Kane Hodder was there, and he
Hmm.
signed my Jason Goes to Hell one.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
That's pretty awesome.
strong dude.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah,
That opening scene where they like the SWAT team like comes out on Jason and they just blow the ever living piss out of him.
yeah,
That's kind of cool. You gotta admit that's kind
yeah,
of cool. But then the whole rest of the movie's kind of downhill from there. As we said earlier, there's weird worm things that possess people, and there's a lack of actual Jason in part nine.
yeah. Well,
But
eventually we'll review those
yep,
someday.
exactly. One thing that's funny is that these actually connect more together than I realized. Like I thought they had nothing to do, like seven doesn't have anything to do with six, and six doesn't have anything to do with five, but really they do follow one kind of after the other. Like seven starts off with Jason chained
Yep,
up at the bottom of the lake, and eight ends with him getting hit with the toxic waste, and in nine his mask is all melty and his face is all weird. So they do kind of connect a little bit.
yep. It's just like similar to like Halloween,
Yep, exactly.
but like the John Carpenter's Halloween, and then you got Rob Zombie. They do connect too,
Yep.
but I
Exactly.
forgot how they connect because it's really confusing to me.
Yep.
But
Yeah. So there you have it. Any last thoughts on Friday the 13th Part 6 before we go?
nope, that's pretty much it.
All right. Well, thanks for listening. I think next week we're going to be talking about strangers, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. And please keep the requests coming. Keep liking and sharing and subscribing and
We
everything.
love those fan requests.
We do love our fan requests,
Hmm.
so keep them coming. And let us know if you want to get a shout out. If you request something and you want us to let the people know who you are and what you requested, we will gladly do that. So just let us know. And with that, thanks for listening.
Thank you.